Mining Perspectives is a new platform to investigate ESG, environmental, social, governance, operations with respect to companies in the mining, exploration, and development industry. While geology and financial aspects have conventionally been the key parameters to evaluate exploration and development projects, in 2023, consideration of ESG factors are important to mitigate financial risk for prospective investors. For example, deploying controls to mitigate environmental damage and maintaining communication with all stakeholders throughout the discovery, exploration, and development stages is important to maintain a positive social relationship. Investors should be aware of actionable operations companies undertake on the ESG front as a strategy to mitigate potential financial risk which can negatively impact a company's goal to discover and develop mineral resources. Coming from a professional background in environmental engineering, I have identified a communication gap in relating how ESG initiatives are an important consideration for risk management of investments in junior mining companies. Join me in my first ever interview as I seek to highlight actionable ESG tasks that Quebec Precious Metals have deployed and are currently pursuing. I encourage viewers to read my research article on Quebec Precious Metals, which provides an overview of company operations. This link can be found in the description of this video. All right, hello Normand. Thank you very much for joining us in this interview for Mining Perspectives. So since you're new to this channel, if you give us a brief biography of yourself, and then we can move into an overview of your company.
It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. I'm a geological engineer by background, all my career in the industry, many years with PricewaterhouseCoopers in Canada and internationally. And over the last 15 years or so, have been involved in a number of junior companies, and most of them have been exploring and developing projects in the province of Quebec.
Excellent. And could you provide a brief overview of Quebec Precious Metals?
Quebec Precious Metals was created 5 years ago by combining two existing TSXV listed companies, plus projects from a third one, supported by Goldcorp at that time, today Newmont, and the largest pension fund in Quebec, Caisse de Dépôt, to fund the next gold mine in the James Bay region of Quebec. And since that time, we've been drilling to find that next mine, and we're making good progress. Lastly, in addition to that, we have monetized a number of non-core assets, which are not in James Bay, not gold. And more recently, we have identified a strong potential to find lithium on our projects in James Bay.
Excellent. So in terms of advancing your projects at QPM, what are your plans this year to advance gold exploration?
Following our discoveries at La Pointe Extension in 2020 and 2021, we want to go back and do some more drilling there to advance the resource base that we have established, and also test some very promising targets along this mineralized corridor, and hopefully find a lot more. This could be a real game changer following this drilling.
And I noticed that you have gold exploration on your other projects, such as Elmer East. Do you have any plans to return there this year?
So at Elmer East, we made the two discoveries 2 years ago, following a target study and surveys that we've done of the magnetic signatures of the rocks in the area. These are gold discovery. One of them also has base metal. At the Lloyd discovery, we need to do an IP survey, which we could do later this year, early next year, because we need to do that in the winter, followed by drilling. And at Elmer East, at Sakemi, and also a third project called Chichu-Lenore, we agree that in view of the changing lithium prices and the rush in James Bay for lithium, and the knowledge that we have that there are pegmatite, which usually contain lithium in James Bay, we are doing a targeting study to identify the best area and to do follow-up prospecting this year to validate those targets in the field and eventually drill them.
Awesome. And is that targeting study expected to be completed shortly, and then prospecting, say, in the fall?
So ALS Gold Spot did a targeting study for us to find those gold targets back in 2000 and 2021. They're doing the same for lithium this time. That study should be available during the month of July. And following that, we'll have a team deployed in the field to validate those targets. And we believe that quite significant progress can be made there with that follow-up prospecting to eventually drill those lithium targets.
Excellent. I suppose that also plays in hand too if you have an investment in Idaho Champion, which is Champion Electric now metals.
Yes, we had a project where we had found a little bit of copper, a little bit of gold, which is very close to where Patriot Metals have made their Corvette discovery. We felt that it was in better hands to be explored by a company such as Champion Electric Metals. So we got, in exchange for shares and royalty, the property given to them, and so they can explore it. And they're about to start their field work in early July. And we believe that they could be very successful at finding a lot of lithium in that area following the discovery of Patriot and also other explorers in the same area.
Very good. And also I noticed that on your corporate presentation, you're also highlighting your rare earths project with Kippawa and Zeus.
As I mentioned earlier, since the creation of the company, we have monetized a number of non-core assets, which are not gold, not James Bay. The most significant one is Kippawa Zeus, Kippawa being the project where $37 million has been spent to produce a feasibility study about 10 years ago, and where Zeus, some interesting exploration targets have been identified. Initially, we wanted to sell the project, and we had a buyer, but in fact, for reasons outside of our control, they decided not to close the transaction. And we have the projects in our hands now. Our partner is Investment Quebec, which is the Ministry of Economy and Innovation. We undertook then to find out what's the best way to create value from the project. And that started by establishing meaningful dialogue and relationships with the local stakeholders, and particularly the two First Nations. And we've been in that process for some time. And all we can say right now is that we believe that significant value can be created following this renewed dialogue with the two First Nations on a project which is the only one in North America that has had a full feasibility study, and that is essentially a heavy rare earths project in a very good area with good infrastructure.
Very interesting. I note in your corporate presentation that for Kippawa, you are planning on conducting internal social acceptability studies. Could you provide some insight as to what that might entail?
Well, studies primarily in the form of better understanding what are the expectations and what is the vision for mineral development, mining in this area, which has had no modern mines producing. So those studies essentially comes down to myself and the chairman of the company spending time there to listen, understand, and establish what could be guiding principles to have possibly a project that could be acceptable. But it starts with dialogue and understanding and relationships.
Right. Building that social relationship over a period of time. And I suppose that also plays in with the note in your corporate presentation about reconciliation approaches based on the federal government critical mineral strategy.
So we fully embrace the federal strategy. Quebec also has a strategy, and there has to be a strong element of reconciliation. Anything we will be doing in the area.
Excellent. And this theme of social engagement is also extended to Sakami. As I noted in your 43101, the need to develop strong local partnerships with the Cree community. Could you discuss some historical and current engagement strategies or that you're currently working on?
So the James Bay region, or EHU James Bay, is a territory that is administered by the Crees. And the Crees, over time, since the 1970s to today, have signed 3 agreements for to foster economic development with the province of Quebec. And they have been very engaged with developers, particularly mining companies, exploration companies. In our case, we've been working closely with the community of Wibinji, which is about 80 kilometers from the Champigny project. And we have established a close rapport with the Taliban that is in our area. We make sure they're well informed. We have hired a number of Indigenous people as part of our projects over time to do things like snow removal and help with the field activities. We believe that's absolutely critical to do that, so they first know what we're doing through to provide some kind of benefit. At the Maurice, we have named the discoveries we made Cree names, and we have made sure they understand what it may mean in terms of future possibilities for exploration and development.
Awesome. And I suppose you also mentioned in your 43-101 that there might be the potential for a long-term vision of a pre-development agreement at Sakami. Could you inform us what that vision looks like or includes?
So if you're going to advance a project in James Bay or at Sakami or anywhere else, you need to establish more formal agreements in close collaboration with the Indigenous people, in the case the Cree Nation, to make sure that they can maximize their benefits for their communities, and at the same time make it still a robust economic project. So as we progress and as we reach a stage where we'll have a resource that is of sufficient size and quality to be well established, then such agreement then could be put into place with the Cree Nation.
Right. So some sort of working relationship towards a potential mining operation.
That is correct.
Awesome. And I suppose also I know on your website that your presentation that you have an Ecologo certification. Could you introduce us what that means or what that is, and highlight how the QPM's rationale for applying for the certification?
So a number of years ago, and I was a Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada board member, PDAC committed to have initiative to encourage more transparency by exploration and mining companies. And then it was left to individual provinces to decide how that should be best implemented. And in Quebec, the Quebec Mineral Exploration Association took the lead to have such certificate or standard design, and it's certified by a well-known certification organization called UL. It's voluntary, it's not mandatory, but has received a very good response. So you've seen many exploration companies like ourselves go through a process of demonstrating that we operate in a safe, environmentally responsible, and socially acceptable fashion. And that certification process involves documenting that this is actually the case, and then following that, being audited in the field to demonstrate that with the field activities.
Awesome. And could you provide some examples of some actionable items that QPM takes on a day-to-day operations to achieve compliance with these outlines for Ecologo?
Well, if we take a look at safety, we make sure we have safety procedures, evacuation procedures if something sad happened at the site in place, and there are people in the field are trained on that. Environmentally speaking, we make sure that there's no waste left behind, that drill sites are rehabilitated, and that water is not contaminated. We also measure the amount of fuel that's consumed and try to minimize that the best way we can. And socially, it involves making sure that communities are informed, that we engage with the local tallyman, that we can hire Indigenous workers, and that they see that everything we do is done responsibly.
Very interesting. Very good. Yeah, the whole idea of mining perspectives personally is to look at mining companies from a different view. I'm coming back from an environmental engineering background myself, so I can see how being a good steward to the environment socially and health and safety and governance is very important in this sector, and very good for investors to see companies do that as well.
Yeah, if you don't have that, you won't be able to explore. It's as simple as that.
Explore or even develop, hopefully, a mining operation in the long run.
Agreed.
Okay, so what are your QPM's plans to acquire and use working capital within, say, the next year?
So we're planning to spend just under $1 million so far this year, maybe more, depending on the results that we have. And we are in a process of identifying funding sources, and we also have non-core assets that can be disposed of still, and we also have a tax credit. So, and we have then also working capital in the form of the shares that we have in Champion Electric. So total working capital is well above 2 million, and that should be sufficient to conduct the activities that I've just described for 2023.
Awesome. And do you still have any non-core assets? As I've noted that QPM has an excellent track record of utilizing non-dilutive financing to acquire more working capital.
So in Ontario, we have 50% in a project with a private company next to the oil palm mine operated by Newmont. It has very good exploration potential, and we've identified buyers for that, and we continue the process to monetize that asset.
Awesome. And do you have any plans to continue with the working capital? So you wanted to potentially drill at Sakami. Is that included in the working capital plans?
Yes, it is.
Okay, awesome. So just as a recap here, can you just provide what can investors look forward to from QPM in the coming months?
So with a very low market capitalization and with the potential to make significant discoveries at Sakami for gold, and then fully evaluate and test the lithium potential on our project in James Bay, and monetization of and creation of value for Kipawa and what we have at Matheson Joint Venture in Ontario. I think that this is very attractive for investors, and we have been very much under the radar over the last couple of years, but we believe it's going to be a great year for QPM with the results we're going to generate and the assets that we have, and supported by a good shareholder base and a strong team.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Normand, for taking the time today to chat with us.
It's a pleasure, Ryan. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.